Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, dead slicers, peasants, vassals, opposition, terrorists, Free Syrian Army, terrorists. I'm a useful idiot. Today I want to talk about Al Qaeda in Syria. But before I get started, I want to dedicate this to one of my subscribers who is well-meaning but unrelenting. And so this video is for you, Kay, because you didn't think I'd cover this topic enough. So here you go. This one is for you. Just bear in mind that your agenda is not my agenda, and my agenda is not your agenda. That said, let's get on to this story, because it definitely has gotten more interesting recently. Because now a recent New York Times article says there was a confirmation that the Syrian opposition is near entirely run by Al Qaeda. In fact, the quote is, "Nowhere in rebel-controlled Syria is there a secular fighting force to speak of," unquote. So as it turns out, there never were any secular moderates. It also confirms what President Assad of Syria has said all along, that his country is under attack from terrorists. And another reason why Assad can characterize his country from being under attack from terrorists is because they're nearly all foreigners as well. So we don't have a huge amount of Syrian opposition to speak of as far as the fighting force, mostly dominated by militant radicals coming in from all over the Middle East and North Africa, including Chechnya, Libya, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, etc. And this is the same scenario we saw in Libya, same scenario we saw in Iraq, same scenario we saw in Afghanistan. Wherever there is a opportunity to confront the Western powers and their puppets, then Al Qaeda will be there, and all these militant, radicalized Islamists will be there. And of course, the main one inside of Syria is the Al-Nusra Front, internationally recognized as a terrorist group, and yet they are the main fighting force in Syria. They have fielded about 5,000 fighters. They've been responsible for over 600 attacks, and they are bringing the same tactics that we've seen in all the areas where Al Qaeda goes. We've improvised explosive devices. We've had 40 suicide bombs already, and that is how it will go. And this also gives more credence to the fact that most of the atrocities that we've seen have been attributed to the Assad government, when in fact they have been perpetrated by these Islamic extremists. They don't have anything to lose. They are in a foreign country, so anyone is fair game, and that's what we're seeing. And there's also been confirmation that these same elements have used chemical weapons themselves in order to try and widen the war and get U.S. involvement. And so once again, if we see chemical weapons being used, it's probably a false flag event. I can't see any logical reason why the Assad regime, considering the red line, so-called red line, has been drawn, why the Assad regime would do that. And one can look at the facts on the ground that the Syrians are going to great lengths to protect any so-called WMDs that they may have. So this is a fruition of an investment and intervention by the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, the usual characters, to arm and direct sectarian extremists affiliated with Al Qaeda against the Syrian government. And they are attracted from all over the world, as previously noted. And this is something that was mapped out, something I brought up in a video about the Syria Plan being in place many years ago. And this is the entire strategy was mapped out as early as 2007, long before any of these Arab Springs or the Syrian Civil War. It was documented in the Seymour Hersh article. The redirection is the administration's new policy benefiting our enemies in the war on terrorism. And I will attach my video about that plan below. And so now, at various points along, we've had various U.S. officials acknowledging that there were radical elements in inside Iraq that were part of the opposition, but now we are getting the picture that all of the viable fighting force and opposition inside of Syria is extremist Islamist Al Qaeda, and in fact, just recently, the head of the Al Nusra Front publicly announced their allegiance to Al Qaeda. So we can't make it any clearer than that. And in fact, we find that the regions that are being conquered by these Al Qaeda affiliates are seizing oil fields to generate revenue and creating Islamic courts and putting in mild or moderate Sharia law in the regions that they control. So this is Al Qaeda, a radical, militant, extremist Islamic group that is positioned to take over Syria. Hardly the scenario that has been publicly acknowledged. But of course we know the real plan, and all we have to do is go back to the Seymour Hersh article to find out this is exactly what the plan was. But now we see that the Obama distinction that there were some sort of secular moderates in Syria that we were supporting and we've been shipping arms to. So that's something to think about. Saudi Arabia, the United States, and been shipping arms and equipment and military hardware, body armor, military vehicles, and tons and thousands of tons of weapons into Syria for the last 2 years. And we have an Al Qaeda army in Syria that we're shipping these arms to. Now Obama's talking about sending more arms to Syria, and all the more ironic considering the fact that now we are getting a confirmation that all of the opposition, and certainly the United States is aware of this as well, because otherwise they wouldn't be training a secular force comprising deserters from the Syrian army in Jordan next door. And so obviously this blurs a lot of lines when you talk about who is assisting Al Qaeda, who is assisting the terrorists, in such cases as the Bradley Manning case being an obvious example. And it's kind of interesting that we have this relationship with terrorists, but we've had this kind of relationship before. Another story has come out recently that confirms this, and that between 2005 and 2007, the U.S. military were training members of an Iranian terrorist group in Nevada, right here in the United States. This group is generally financed, armed, and trained by Israel and Mossad, but we actually brought a bunch of them over here to train in the United States, and obviously they are going to be unleashed to destabilize Iran. And but anyway, back to Al Qaeda in Syria. So now we have confirmation of our worst fears that there is no moderate secular opposition really in Syria, and this fact also clarifies why we have the so-called Free Syrian Army. Now that we know they're Al Qaeda, it makes sense why they are clashing with Kurdish elements, why they're clashing with other Syrian elements, why they are being provocative on all the borders, including the border of Lebanon and the border with Jordan and Turkey. So this is changes the picture considerably. So now that we know that, it's going to be all the more interesting to see the Obama administration and Europe lift their arms embargo, and for this thing to escalate. And then what's it going to be like when there is a United States intervention? So then we're going to be in the middle of a failing Syrian regime, in the middle of a country dominated by Al Qaeda, and then United States troops in the middle of it. Not a scenario I am looking forward to, because there's one thing we can guarantee. If we see a fall of this government, there will be a unprecedented sectarian bloodbath and a humanitarian catastrophe. But that's what you get when you dance with the devil. So there we have it. Here we are supporting an Al Qaeda army inside Syria. I'm East Validian. don't you be one too.